Ashley Freehan mastered the work-from-home mom routine well before the pandemic. She not only knows how to take care of business and her 2 kids, she's good at taking care of herself too.
I am a work from home mom. I'm an entrepreneur. I own 3 different businesses. And so to me, self-care is not working in the morning. That is giving priority to my clients instead of myself. So I really try to stay off social media. I don't check my email first thing in the morning because I really want to focus on me and my needs and make sure that I'm taken care of before my kids need me all the time.
This is the How She Moms podcast with Whitney Archibald. I'm a mother of 5 on a mission to help moms connect with your kids, manage your homes, and create your own unique version of motherhood. I curate ideas from different moms so you can pick and choose what works for you and your family. Before we get too deep into this episode, I want to introduce you to a new sponsor for the show, Smart for Life. When I was a busy teenager, I remember wishing there was a magic pill I could take to replace a meal on those days I just didn't have time to sit down and eat. Luckily, by the time I became a busy mom, protein bars were invented for those times when you just have to eat on the go. Now that I'm well into motherhood, bars have come a long way. I've tried them all, and I'm so happy to have discovered a new go-to bar, Smart for Life. My 15-year-old son and I were searching for a bar that was filling, gluten-free, uses ingredients we can pronounce, and most importantly, was not loaded with sugar. He eats his as a pick-me-up after workouts, and I usually end up eating one to replace either breakfast or lunch while I'm out and about, or when I just realize I forgot to eat, as moms often do. Smart for Life also sells cookies, shakes, soups, and other products. If you'd like to give them a try, head to smartforlife.com and use the code HowSheMoms with no spaces to get a 10% discount off your order. I'm so excited to share this bright light of a mother, Ashley Freehan, with you today as we slowly ease out of this pandemic. I actually recorded this with her in the fall, but even though many of our kids are back in school in person, they're about to come back out again for the summer. And whether our work involves running our homes, running our own businesses, or doing work at home that we used to do in an office, or whatever our situation is, balancing work and kids requires constant innovation. Ashley has some great ideas, from how to entertain kids while you're working, to helping them understand your work, to figuring out a viable daily schedule, and even convincing your kids to wear underwear. In fact, one of the 3 businesses she currently runs involves teaching other moms how to run both their businesses and their families. Like many of us, Ashley Freehan would never have predicted how many curves and twists her career path would take when she started out as a young college student with every intent of becoming an interior designer. Even as she was signing up for classes,
I decided to go into elementary education, and I graduated in the middle of the year in December, and all of the teaching contracts were filled and nobody needed any teachers right then. And so having just spent 6 months student teaching and not getting paid, and I was newly married, I was like, I think I need a job like yesterday. And so I did what I know best, which is nannying. I had nannied for multiple families, and I was looking for just really quick work. And so I started nannying for a family, and I was very upfront with them. I started in February, and I said, I will only be able to work with you for the next, several months until I find a teaching job. And I ended up staying with them for 4.5 years.
whoa.
So I actually never went into teaching. The only teaching that I ever did was I actually homeschooled their son for kindergarten. But throughout those 4.5 years, I actually got pregnant with my first child, and they let me bring her to work the first year.
Wow.
And so during that time, I started dabbling in photography, and I started to turn it into a real business. And in 2012, just a year after she was born, I started specializing in wedding photography. So I did that for 8 years. I actually still do that right now, but I am kind of transitioning more into brand photography. And then during my wedding experience and all of I've photographed over 150 weddings. And so over that time, I started seeing a lot of photo booths, and I was like, oh my gosh, these are hideous. Like, I feel like there has to be something prettier out there. And so I actually started a photo booth company out of the need for a more classy looking photo booth. And so I started that in 2014. And then I felt like I really just was finding myself in a really dark place. I was so lonely as an entrepreneur. I had two groups of friends. I had friends that had kids that I would go hang out with, so my child could have social interaction. And then there was another group of friends that were all of my industry friends, all of my photographer friends, or all of my wedding vendor friends, and none of them had kids. And so I felt like, those people, the industry people, had no idea what it was like to raise a family. And the other side, all of my mom friends had no idea what it was like to have a business. And so I just felt so lonely that there was nobody who understood what I was going through. And so one morning, during my quiet time, I was just praying and talking to God, and I was so beat down and broken about that. And I was like, what do I do? Like, there has to be something out there that I'm missing. And he just continually laid it on my heart that I needed to create a workshop for mompreneurs. And I needed to teach them all of the things that I had learned about how to take care of yourself, how to juggle motherhood and business, how to feel supported and empowered to do both and do them well. And I said no, because, who
It's
tells
scary.
God no? Yeah, who tells God no? But I was like, no, that I heard that wrong. Like, I'm just going to pretend I didn't hear that. But like literally for the next 4 months, that's all he said. You got to do this. This is what you've been asking for. You need to create this. And so I was like, okay, well, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to go all in. So I had no followers, no Instagram, nothing, no experience ever putting on an in-person event at all. I didn't even have a group of mompreneur friends. I think I literally knew one person who owned a business and was a mom. So I just started putting on free events every month for 4 months leading up to the workshop. And I ended up growing the community very quickly. There were hundreds of moms in Arizona that were local that were also looking for the same community. And I have just met the most amazing women because of this, and all because I just answered the call to be the change I was looking for.
I love Ashley's story and that she gathered the courage to just run with so many different ideas. I think that's the first thing we can learn from her. Versatility and willingness to jump into new opportunities that present themselves is a really essential skill for mothers, both during a pandemic and for whatever the world looks like coming out of this. But another great and necessary skill that this crazy world requires is the ability to set boundaries, another thing Ashley is very good at. This became obvious when she answered my next question: when did you know you wanted to be a mom?
I always knew I wanted to be a mom. I just constantly enjoyed being around kids. I loved their energy. And so I definitely knew I wanted to be a mom. However, becoming a mom was definitely different than what I expected because, of course, I wasn't getting paid for it anymore. And it was not as easy. When you are a babysitter and you are playing with the kids, it's all about what they need. And then when you become a mom, you have so many other obligations that you have to attend to. And your children, they need you 24/7. And so I think going into motherhood, I felt like it was going to be a lot different. I felt like it was going to be all fun and games and that I was going to really enjoy it. And what I soon realized was it was difficult, and it felt like I never had time for myself. And it was a lot of learning and growing and finally coming to the realization that as a mom, I have to take care of myself and my needs first before I can pour into my kids. So I think that's been the biggest game changer in motherhood for me, is setting boundaries and expectations with my children that allow me to be fulfilled first so I can pour into them and the rest of my family. One of the really important boundaries that I have in my life and that I encourage all other moms to have is a wake-up boundary. And what that looks like is that my children both know that they are allowed to wake up whenever they want to, but if it is not 7:00, they cannot expect me to do anything except for give them a hug, a kiss, and a hello, and that's it. And it kind of seems harsh, but it's not. It is something that they know, and that they do try to push that boundary a lot, but they come down, they say good morning, and I just let them know, like, hey guys, it's not 7 o'clock. Mom is doing my quiet time, is what I call it, and I'll be with you at 7 o'clock. And they have learned to respect that boundary. Like I said, some days they push it, but what I like to do in the morning is make sure that all of my needs are taken care of first. So when I wake up, I make sure I get dressed, I brush my teeth, I do all of the like hygiene things. I actually put on makeup. I maybe do my hair a few times a week, and I sit down and I do a Bible study, whether it's reading the Bible or actually doing a physical Bible study that I journal through, or maybe I just pull out my own journal and just talk to God that way. And then I also like to sometimes just read a book, give myself a pedicure, honestly, whatever I want to do in the morning, but I try to make sure that I'm not working. So I really try to stay off social media. I don't check my email first thing in the morning because I really want to focus on me and my needs and make sure that I'm taken care of before my kids need me all the time.
But setting this boundary did not happen overnight.
I constantly allowed myself to be woken up by my kids. So I would sleep in as long as I possibly could, and then they would wake me up whenever they woke up, and it was just like they ran the house. You know, it was kind of like, hey, we're ready for you to be waking up right now, so get out of bed. And I came to a realization I mean, like I said, I don't know if it was one day or just the constant frustration, and I was so annoyed with my kids, and I was just like, I can't even get dressed without it being interrupted. I can't even use the bathroom without them needing something. And so finally I heard someone say, like, you have to wake up before your kids if you want to have a productive, joy-filled day. And I was like, what? Okay, I guess I'll try it. And it honestly took me forever, probably like 6 months consistently to actually get out of bed and stay awake. But what really helped me the most was to charge my phone in another room. So when my alarm went off, I actually had to physically get out of bed to turn it off. And I would turn the lights on, I would wash my face so that my body would start to wake up. Even though subconsciously, or maybe it was consciously, I wanted to go back to bed, you know, like, I'm like, my body's tired. I didn't get enough sleep. I probably should have gone to bed earlier. And no, I would just have to tell myself every day, if you do not do this, you're going to regret it. And so it just was a habit that I had to force myself into at first. But now my alarm goes off at 5:15 every morning, and I am awake and ready to get my stuff done because I know what a difference it makes in my day.
I then asked Ashley how she gets work done while her kids are at home.
Really letting my kids in on what it is that I do. Because my husband works out of the house full time. He is gone a lot. And so my kids kind of see that as like, oh, well, I guess when you go to work, you just leave the house. And I have to train my children that there are some people that actually work from home, and that's what I do. I'm what's called an entrepreneur, and this is what it looks like. And even though I am home, doesn't mean that I am not busy, right? It doesn't mean that I'm not working. And so during COVID, when my kids were coming home, you know, they were home with me for the past almost 5 months, I really had to explain to them what that looks like. Like, dad gets to leave the house to go to work, but mom stays home and I work in my office. And so I had to set those boundaries and expectations with them that there are times when I'm working and there are times when I can play. And so that is a big deal to me. And I speak to my moms in my community a lot about this, is those boundaries. Your children have to know what's expected of them, but also what you're responsible for as an entrepreneur. And then the second one I would say is I really had to learn what my children need and give them the attention and positive control and the connection that they need from me first before I work. So I talk to my moms with 3 pillars in mind. So the first pillar is your self-care and your mindset. And the second pillar is your parenting and the boundaries. And the third is the business and finding clarity. And so it goes in that order for a reason. And then obviously your spouse is in there as well. But I am a firm believer in the fact that you have to take care of yourself first, but then you have to take care of your children's needs before you can ever expect them to allow you to get what you need to get done.
So now let's take a look at what a typical workday looks like for Ashley, both during and after quarantine.
So when my kids were at home with me full time, kind of a sample schedule of what I would set up for them was I would get my quiet time done in the morning before 7 o'clock. And then as soon as they were awake, sometimes they would sleep in and give me a little extra time. But as soon as they were awake or it was 7 o'clock, I would have them come downstairs. They have a checklist that they have to get done before they eat breakfast. And this is something that I think is really important as well for kids, is having a routine and having expectations laid out. And so both of my kids have a checklist that says everything they need to complete before breakfast. And we put it in a sheet protector. I have one for each of my kids. And there are little pictures on there too, for those of you that might have little ones and can't read yet. And they go through that checklist, and as soon as it's done, they're welcome to eat breakfast with us. And what's funny is I've never been the kind of mom that does like a sit down breakfast, like, I made breakfast, everyone come eat it. It's kind of more of like, hey guys, what do you want for breakfast? And they kind of get their own breakfast. Or I had a schedule that was like, this is what we're having for breakfast. And I would say, do you want eggs this way or this way? And so it's kind of changed and evolved over time. But once they have their checklist done, then we eat breakfast and we go straight into together time. And what this is it's basically a time that we play all together. So whether that's playing hide and seek or a board game or sitting on my bed and reading a pile of books, whatever my kids decide, which sometimes they don't agree, so I choose, and I'll be like, okay, this is what we're doing if you can't agree. And I just spend 20 minutes of together time with my kids. Now, some days I know that my son needs more attention than others, and I can tell instantly when he wakes up. And so what I might do after together time is I might give my kids special time, and I might do 10 minutes of undivided attention with each of my children. That has been the biggest game changer in my children's life. I use connection special time as a preventative measure. I use it as an in the moment measure when my kids are losing their mind and they're about to, like, the world is coming to an end.
I'm going to jump in here just to acknowledge how smart this is and applicable to so many working situations. It's amazing how far a little bit of one-on-one time goes, and it can be counterintuitive to front-load this special time instead of using it as a reward for being good while you work. But if you just promise to play a game after your work is done, chances are your kids will interrupt you much more, wondering if it's time to play yet. Okay, back to Ashley.
Okay, so then when my kids are both at school and my schedule looks a little bit different, obviously, I still have in place my quiet time. I have that you wake up boundary where my kids need to take care of what they need until 7 o'clock. They can play in their rooms, they can play together, but they give me that time. Then we go into breakfast, but they also still have to do their checklist. So they have a checklist that they have to do before they can eat breakfast. And once we eat breakfast together, and one thing, let me back up. If they wake up on time without me having to wake them up, I will go in and read them a book. Each of them, and just take a 5-minute connection with them, so they feel seen, they feel heard, they feel loved. I always welcome my kids when I see them in the morning. I say, good morning, I need my good morning hug. And my good morning hug, yes, even for my 9-year-old, is I pick her up, she wraps her legs around me and her arms, and that is our good morning hug, and we squeeze as tight as we can. And I always whisper in their ear, I missed you while you were sleeping.
Oh,
yes. And they love it. And it's something that I look forward to every morning, and they know that mom cares about them. My husband goes to work early before they wake up, so they don't see him in the morning. And I love that 5 minutes. If I can get that 5 minutes every day, it's a game changer. But sometimes they wake up late or they're on the wrong side of the bed. And I really am trying to make sure that's a priority, because when that happens, everything is different. They are more willing to do what I ask. They are more willing to have a good attitude about it. And the one thing that I really strive for in the mornings is to make sure that I am listening to what they're saying. Because as a mom and parents in general, it's so easy for us to prioritize what we want versus what our kids are doing. And so we get really irritated very quickly when they're not compliant. But if you take a minute and you listen to what they're saying, but you go deeper and you ask questions to understand what's going on, that's when everything changes. So I can give you an example. The other morning, it was the second day of school. My son refused to put on underwear. He just didn't want to. And I was like, well, like, it's not optional. And so I'm like, you have to wear underwear to school. And I kind of fought back with him, and it was not my best self. And I finally had to walk away, and I just had to remind myself, like, find out why he doesn't want to wear his underwear. Because he's not just not wanting to wear them because he doesn't want to wear them. So I finally went back in as he was tantruming on the floor and slamming the door. And I was just like, Jaden, why don't you want to wear your underwear? And after the tears stopped, he said, they don't feel comfortable. They bother my legs. They're itching me and they're tight and they hurt. And I said, okay, well, maybe it's time that you need bigger underwear. I said, how about I buy you some underwear? I will order it online today. It'll be here in 2 days. Can you wear these underwear for the next 2 days? Fine. And all it took was me listening to him and understanding what he needed. And it didn't need to be a big power struggle. Like, I just needed to listen to what he really needed. And sometimes your child is not going to be able to tell you that. But what's important to know is that there's always an underlying reason. They're not just saying no because they want to say no. There's some other reason behind it.
Oh, I love that example. That's great. Coming from a place where we've gone to the doctor's office twice and my children have surprisingly not been wearing underwear.
I know. I don't understand it. I'll ask him too. I'll be like, are you wearing underwear? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, show me. And then he's like, why do you always want me to show you? And I'm like, because generally you're not wearing underwear.
So funny. Oh, after you did that special time, together time,
mm-hmm.
which was sometimes special time, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes just all of you. Then did you start working? When did you fit in the work, and when did they do their school?
During the quarantine part?
Mm-hmm.
So I would set up a schedule, and of course it was like loose, because things change and they need certain things, but I would have 2 work blocks that consisted of an hour and a half to 2 hours, and they would do playtime during that. And I helped facilitate what that playtime looks like. So sometimes during our together time, I would introduce a new game or a new activity, and I would teach them how to play it. So couple examples are, we set up a camping tent in our playroom, and I let the kids put out their sleeping bags, and we got animals to pretend like we were in the forest, and they just had so much fun during my work block playing like they were camping. But it took me introducing it and kind of making it feel fun for them to enjoy that. And we've also done the same thing with a veterinarian clinic. So I actually had them help me create little patient cards in Canva, and a sign that said welcome to, I think it was Loving Hearts Veterinarian. They made up their own name, and we put little animal, clip art all over it, and totally made it up to be so fun. And then I let them use an old telephone and an old keyboard, and then they actually played together like they owned a veterinarian's office. So we did that together. for a couple of days, and then they started doing it every single day after that by themselves. And so sometimes it just takes you as the parent to introduce something for them to be like, ooh, this is fun. Otherwise, if I would have said, hey guys, why don't you go play veterinarian clinic? They'd be like, no, that sounds boring. So that's what I would do. And we actually created this brainstorm list. It is so simple. And I actually got it from a Pinterest blog post that I was following, or that I had found. And she was talking about content buckets for your business. And I was like, I could totally use this for my kids. So what I did was I had them come up with areas in the house that they could play. So like their bedroom, the playroom, our kitchen, the backyard. And then under each location, they would help me identify like a genre, right, of something to do. So maybe outside, for instance, it would be like water activities, sports. But then we would come up with actual specifics underneath it. So for water, they could do the hose, they could do like a mini pool, or a water table or water balloons. So they would come up with their own ideas. And so what I did with that, I think there's like 5 locations in your home, and then there's 4 of the subcategories, and then there's 5 individual categories. So whatever that math is, I think it's like over 80 ideas that your kids have. And then just print it out and post it in multiple locations around the house. So when your kids are bored, instead of coming up with ideas or getting frustrated that they're annoying you, you refer them to the brainstorm. Where is your brainstorm list? And then they go on there and they're like, oh, okay, well, let's go outside. We haven't done this lately. And so that has been really helpful. And again, for younger kids, pictures, and just let your kids pick, what do you want to do right now? Another tip, if you have younger kids, is making a corner in your office or making a corner in the downstairs. So if you want to be getting like housework done, you can refer your child or redirect your child to this special corner, and where this is just for you. This is your art corner. Here's what you can do at this art corner. Like in my office, when my kids were younger, I would set up like their own table. I would set up their own little keyboard, and they could pretend to be working while I was. I also would print out like coloring pages and staple them together and let them make their own coloring book every day. And just getting really creative, but allowing your kids to feel empowered is so important. And so that was what I did during COVID. Even though they're older now, they still they played so well together. I think that's one of the biggest blessings that I found during the whole 5 months of quarantine, was that they became so close. And I, for so long, had been trying to nurture that relationship with them, but because they were forced, because we couldn't see anyone else. And I was like, you guys are so lucky that you have a sibling. Think of all of the kids right now that are only children, and they don't have anyone to play with. Like, you guys are so lucky. And I would just tell them over and over again, like, Scarlett is your best friend. Jaden is your best friend. Like, you have a built-in best friend. Like, cherish that and protect each other's hearts and take care of each other. And that's another big thing in our home, is we are all about teamwork, and we are not about competition, or that's why I love that special time so much, because it eliminates a lot of the competition between my kids, because they know they don't have to fight for my attention, that I have enough love for both of them.
That's such a good place to end. I think the beautiful thing about Ashley's schedule is that the kids know what to expect. They don't have to compete for her attention with each other or her work, because she not only blocks time for work, but she blocks time for them too. We've all been in those situations where we're giving half of our attention to whatever work we're doing and half to our kids, which is not productive for anyone involved. I love Ashley's loving approach to her children, herself, and all the moms she helps. Now, let's all go out and set some healthy boundaries. Thank you for listening to the How She Moms podcast. If you like it, tell a friend. The bigger the community, the more ideas. There are lots of ways you can add your ideas to the How She Moms community. We have a Facebook group where we share ideas about upcoming topics and help each other solve problems we're facing in motherhood. You can also follow How She Moms on Instagram for quick tips and ideas. And you can go to howshemoms.com where you'll find transcripts of episodes and lots of other great resources. Special thanks to my mom, Susan Singley, for recording my theme music. She played this song all the time when I was growing up, and to me, it's the soundtrack of motherhood.